Hi everybody, welcome back to the Rummage workshop. We're going to be giving new life to this outdated dresser this week. The factory finish is failing all over this piece, especially along the top, and it is this weird like yellow toned color. It is definitely not my favorite. I love the original hardware on this. I will absolutely be reusing this on this piece. This thing is filthy and it has seen better days, but it is solid as a rock and I can't wait to get started. As always, we start by giving the entire piece a thorough cleaning inside and out with a strong degreaser. I prefer to use TSP alternative for this. Just be sure to use gloves as this can be really hard on sensitive skin. First, I start by removing the hardware and storing it in a safe place. Then I remove all of the drawers from the body to make everything a lot easier to clean. I then vacuum out every drawer, scrub it down, and then rinse away the TSP with warm water. As I clean the drawers, I reattach some of the original metal drawer runners. They're in great shape, it just looks like they're missing some screws, so I tapped them back into their slots and then reattached using screws from the workshop. Now that this piece is all clean, we can move on to repairs and sanding. I'm going to be using Bondo to fill the little crack on the side of this dresser. If you've never used Bondo before, it is stinky and you have to move really fast once you've mixed the two agents together, but it dries hard as a rock and it is my favorite product for fixing bigger gouges and dings in pieces like this. While that Bondo cures, I'm going to get to work exposing the veneer on the top drawers. I'm coming in with 150 grit sandpaper to remove the finish, taking extra care along the edges and corners. If you're gonna blast through veneer, this is where it's most likely to happen, and believe me, I know from experience. Once I've sanded away the majority of the finish, I like to come back with a hand sander to work on the corners and even everything else out. I then drop my grit to 220 to refine the texture and to knock back any swirl marks that I might have made with my sander. I then lightly rub a brown paper bag over the top to further refine the texture and just look at the difference this made. When I first started out, I was really scared of wood refinishing. I didn't want to mess it up. So I started practicing sanding down sections of wood or veneer that I knew I was going to be painting over anyways. This was a great way for me to get a feel for the process, make a few mistakes without affecting the outcome of my overall design. Here are a few tips if you're just starting out. Always sand in the direction of the wood grain. Change your sandpaper out often. When in doubt, move to a hand sander. Take your time and wipe away sanding dust often. The most important tip is to just start. Wood refinishing takes no more research, experience, or talent than it did for me to just start painting furniture, so I vote you just go for it. Next, I'm exposing the wood on all of the legs and spacers, as well as sanding down the now cured Bondo. I'm taking extra care to fully sand away the places where the finish was failing so that it doesn't affect my finish over time. Once I scuff sand the remainder of the piece, I'll be ready to start priming and painting. If we were to seal the exposed wood right now, we would end up with the exact same yellow finish that we had before. To combat that, I'm going to be lightly whitewashing the wood with a little bit of white paint diluted in water. You want your solution to be opaque, but still very thin. I started out by lightly brushing the solution on in the direction of the wood grain. I then immediately wiped it back with a damp rag. I did this to see how the wood fibers were accepting the wash. On some woods, this will soak right in, and on others, it just needs time. In the end, I put on a single light coat and let it dry completely to get the effect I was looking for. You may have to try out different timing to dial in what is right for your project. While that was drying, I wrapped up the drawers to protect them from overspray while we're painting. Once the wash was dry, I taped up the legs and spacers and started priming. We have several surfaces exposed right now: bare wood, Bondo, and the scuffed up finish. So this is a case where there's no question as to whether I need to prime or not. I want to even everything out so that I'm applying our finish over a single substrate. Now that everything is prepped, I'm finally ready to paint. I'm going to be using Melange Paint's Aloe Green, and I can't wait to see what it's going to look like with that whitewashed wood. I poured just over half the jar into a paint strainer, then thinned it out for spraying to the consistency of pancake batter. For even coverage, your gun should look like a plane landing and taking off while simultaneously pulling and releasing the trigger at the edges. This will prevent paint waste and overspray. You want your spray pattern to slightly overlap at the edges. This will give you full coverage without slapping on too much paint. Join me next week for a full breakdown on how to use an HVLP gravity-fed spray gun. I'll cover technique, setup, and everything in between. I sprayed on 2 coats of paint, letting each layer dry for at least 2 hours. Be sure to lightly sand between each layer of primer, paint, and top coat for a smooth, professional-looking finish. After my paint dried, I applied 2 coats of Varathane water-based poly in a satin sheen for durability. Now it's just time for the finishing touches. I gave this piece a full 8 hours to cure. Now it's time to add in the final touches. There were a few stains in the drawers that I couldn't get out with my sander, so I'm adding in a graphic drawer liner. That way they're nice and fresh for their new owner. I don't really have a good place to cut drawer liners in my garage, so I usually measure the drawers and then cut the tack paper to size on my kitchen island. So I'm just adding the drawer liner in one by one and then reattaching the hardware as I go, and we are so close to the finish line. Let me remind you of what this piece looked like before, and then what it looks like now. Thank you guys so much for following along with me on this project. Let me know what you thought in the comments. Be sure to tune in next week because I'm going to be going over how I use my HVLP gravity-fed spray gun on all of my furniture projects. All right, see you guys then. Bye.